What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I'm going to be comparing a bunch of the non-lethal grenades in Black Ops 2. The equipment we're going to be breaking down includes concussion grenades, flash grenades, EMP grenades, and shock charges. So first up, each one of these non-lethals has a different effect on their target, so let's compare these effects. The primary effect of the concussion grenade is to slow the enemy's movement and aiming speed significantly. The other effect is that it slightly flashes and causes the enemy's screen to sway, which disorients him and throws his aim off. It's also really important to point out that in Black Ops 2, unlike previous Call of Duty games, the concussion grenades have no effect on enemy equipment like claymores and bouncing betties, and they also have no effect on enemy score streaks except RC cars. They'll kind of knock back a little bit, but they won't actually slow down the RC car. So moving on, the flash grenade causes the enemy's screen to brighten based on the distance from detonation. We'll get into the effective range later, but if a flash detonates right next to the enemy, their brightness will increase to the point where all they will see is white. In addition to this, the enemy's hearing is also impaired while they are flashed. All they will hear is a really high-pitched ringing sound, and they won't be able to hear anything going on around them. Unlike the concussion, the flashbang still allows the enemy to move and aim normally, although they aren't able to sprint. So next up, we have the EMP grenade. This piece of non-lethal equipment will disable all of the electronics of the impacted enemy. So they will have no heads-up display, no kill feed, no electronic display on their optics, and they won't be able to call in any score streaks for the duration that they are affected by the EMP grenade. EMP grenades also destroy any enemy score streak within their range. And finally, the shock charge obstructs the enemy's vision with arcs of electricity and some other debris, and it slows down their movement and aiming speed, although it's not to the same extent as the concussion grenade. So now that we've covered the effects of these pieces of equipment, let's have a look at their effective ranges. One thing that really surprised me is that the effective range of the concussion grenade, the flashbang, and the EMP grenade is exactly the same. It's also really interesting to note that the effective radius is exactly the same size as the radius of this little circular area on cargo, so that acts as a really good reference point for you. As for the shock charge, the effective detonation range is displayed here in green, and it's no surprise that it's much smaller than the effective range of the other equipment. So the next thing to cover is the extent of the effect of each one of these non-lethals at different ranges. With the concussion grenade, at maximum range, the effect is not too extreme and it only lasts for around 2 seconds. At very close range, the effect basically renders the enemy useless at first, and the total effect lasts for over 5 seconds. Now for the flashbang, at maximum range, the effect is barely even noticeable and it only lasts for about half a second. At very close range, the flash causes pretty much full blindness and deafness at first, and the total effect lasts about 2.5 seconds. Moving on to the EMP grenade, the effect lasts just over 11 seconds regardless of distance from detonation. So it can be right at your feet or at the maximum range and it will still be just over 11 seconds. Also, right now seems like a good time to point out that the EMP grenade also works through walls and even floors. So if you throw an EMP grenade into a 2-story building, it has the potential to reach both stories, which is really nice to know. Finally, the shock charge is really unique in that it's the only one of these pieces of equipment that will only detonate when an enemy is within its range. Regardless of the range, the effect lasts for just over a second, and the distance to the shock charge seems to make no difference to the effect. So now let's move on to the final characteristics that we're going to compare. These characteristics are the time it takes to throw and the time it takes to detonate each one of these non-lethal equipment. Just so you know, the time to throw statistic I calculated with an assault rifle in my hand. The time will vary based on the weapon that you're holding, but the assault rifle is a really good baseline for the test. Also, I didn't use fast hands while I was testing. For time to throw, this is the total amount of time in which you can't use your gun. The concussion is just barely fastest at about 1.5 seconds. Next fastest is the flashbang at around 1.6 seconds, then the shock charge at about 1.7 seconds, and finally the EMP grenade is the slowest at about 1.8 seconds. For the time to detonation, I calculated from the moment the throwing animation begins, and once again with an assault rifle equipped. The concussion grenade detonates in about 1.85 seconds, or upon impact if it doesn't impact anything within 1.85 seconds. So if you throw it way up in the air and it's in the air for more than 1.85 seconds, it will detonate on impact and not in the air. The flashbang detonates in 2 seconds regardless of whether or not it impacts anything. So it will detonate in midair unlike the concussion. The EMP grenade is similar to the concussion in that it won't detonate in midair, but instead of the 1.85 second delay, it takes at least 2 seconds before the EMP will detonate on impact. If it does impact anything, it will detonate in 2 seconds. And finally, as you already know, the shock charge does not have a detonation time, as it will only detonate when an enemy triggers it by entering its trigger radius. Also, just to point out, there is no trigger delay at all. The shock charge detonates instantly once triggered. So that's all I have for you guys for these non-lethal pieces of equipment. Each one of them has its own strengths and weaknesses. If you want something that slows enemies down significantly and impairs their ability to aim, the Concussion Grenade is perfect. If you want to blind the enemy, the Flashbang is definitely what you're looking for. If you want a really versatile non-lethal that will annoy the enemy as well as take out equipment and score streaks, the EMP Grenade is the way to go. And finally, if you want a non-lethal that can be used to either watch your back or attack the enemy, the shock charge is great. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.